Hey, Dragon Slayers. It's been about an hour and a half since my last meal. My blood sugar is 129, headed down. My last meal was about a pound and a half of barbecue. It was very good. I had about 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce, about a fourth pound of pork sausage, a fourth pound of beef sausage, and lots of different ribs. I had a beef rib, several pork ribs, a few baby back ribs. Excellent. I haven't had barbecue in a long time. I'm actually in the middle of a small neighborhood barbecue competition, so I'll be eating some more barbecue tomorrow. Today's video is all about asking the question of what is your personal fat threshold and why it matters. So, in my research of Dr. Ted Naiman, this was one of the first videos that I found of his. So, I placed his video as well as Dr. Barry's video. They both talk about personal fat threshold. It's a really interesting concept, and Dr. Beekman has also, Benjamin Beekman has talked about this in his um, videos in the past. So many people think that elevated insulin is the cause of obesity, but and this is according to Ted Naiman. He says, but I'm coming to realize that most of the time it's actually the other way around. It is actually obesity, or at least being overfat relative to our personal fat threshold, that causes hyperinsulinemia. To be clear, it is not being obese that causes diabetes. Instead, it's a matter of being over fat relative to your personal fat threshold. Some people are blessed to be able to store a lot more energy in their fat stores before they become insulin resistant and diabetic, while others find that can only store a little bit of energy in their adipose stores before it overflows and ends up being stored in their vital organs or bloodstream. So you have to understand that there's hyperplasia versus hypertrophic fat cells. I talked about this briefly in a previous video, but I'll recap. Hyperplasia is the growth of cells by creating more cells, and hypertrophic is the growth of a cell by increasing the size of a single cell. So, if your fat cell has a genetic predisposition to be hyperplastic, then your one fat cell, as it starts to fill up, fill up, fill up, it bloop, it teleports, right? Or not teleports, but it produces a second fat cell. Whereas a hypertrophic tendency of a genetic tendency of a fat cell means that, okay, it's filling up with fat, filling up with fat, filling up with fat, and that's it, right? It doesn't multiply. So that fat cell is done once it reaches its maximum capacity. So, an example of this in real life is people who are skinny fat, meaning that they have a high amount of visceral and organ fat, but low to no visible subcutaneous fat. Genetically, they would have hypertrophic fat cell tendencies, meaning that their fat cells do not like to multiply. They just grow to their maximum cell size, and then they start dumping excess fat elsewhere, wherever they can find it, usually viscerally or in the organ itself. When you see people on My 600-Pound Life, they have fat cells that have hyperplastic tendencies, meaning their fat cells love to multiply and seemingly have no limit on how many times they'll divide. So you can only genetically get so big. This is why there are thin people, people with normal BMIs, who have terrible diabetes or type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. It's not all about the fat, it's about your personal threshold of fat. So, Dr. Ted Naiman talks, and Dr. Benjamin Beekman as well, have talked about how they've seen Southeast Asian communities where these people are like 10 pounds overweight, but they've got type 2 diabetes, which is crazy. And there are people of Germanic descent or Nordic descent in the West who can be, 100 pounds overweight and be more metabolically healthy. It just kind of goes back to the whole schema that weight is not everything, right? Weight is not the true indicator of your health. there are so many more factors and so many more things that you need to look at. So I've included a great article from Ted Naiman on the subject that breaks everything down step by step in an easy to understand way, as well as the 2 videos from Dr. Berry as well as Naiman himself that break this down and explore this topic. It's very, very interesting, and I think you guys will find it fascinating like I have. So don't forget to like and subscribe. You can support me on Patreon if you wish. Any amount helps keep this channel going, and that's what I've got for you guys today. So remember that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.